On this week's episode, we're talking data centers, how you can get involved and have a career in data centers. Welcome to the show where we tackle the tough questions submitted by installers, estimators, project managers, ICT personnel so we can connect at the human level so that we can connect the world. If you're watching this show on YouTube, would you mind hitting the subscribe button and the bell button to be notified when new content is being created? If you're listening to us on one of the audio podcast platforms, would you mind giving us a 5-star rating? And if we're not a 5-star rated show, let us know what we can do to make it a 5-star show. Those two little steps helps us take on the algorithm so we can get this message out and educate, encourage, and enrich the lives of people in the ICT industry. Thursday nights, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. What are you doing? I do a live stream on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, where you get to ask your favorite RCDD questions about design, installation, certification, estimation, even career path. But I can hear you now, Chuck, I'm driving my truck at 6 p.m. on Friday. I can't watch a video. I'll get into an accident. That's okay. They are recorded, and you can access them on letstalkcabling.com. And then also, while this show is free and will always remain free, if you find value in this content and you would like to support this platform, click on this QR code right here, and you can buy me a cup of tea, or you can schedule a 15-minute one-on-one call with me after hours, of course. So as I said in the intro, we're talking data centers. That's a hot topic right now, and it's a hot career path. And there's a book out that's really going to help you identify how to get into career path. And it also even helps veterans and also women as well to get into career path. So let's bring on the show Carrie Goetz, the author. I got another author on this show. Welcome to Let's Talk Cabling. Carrie, how you doing?
Awesome. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. Is it the weekend yet? It's just been one of them weeks.
Not quite. I think we just had one.
Was it just? Did we just have one? Oh man, that's what happens when you get too much going on. Yeah, I got like a day job. I got the podcast, and I got a farm. And I'm telling you, I have no time sometimes. Sometimes it's just a blur, just a blur.
Plus, as we get older, the days tend to run together and go a whole lot faster, I think. That's why they call it downhill, because the speed increases.
You're absolutely correct with that. Absolutely correct with that. So for those who may not know you and your great accomplishment, by the way, congratulations on your Bixie Award. Give the audience a 30-second, 45-second overview who you are, what certifications, and so they just kind of gain some authority with them.
So my name's Carrie Goetz. I have been in the IT industry in some shape, form, or fashion for about 40 years now, a little over 40 years, actually. I started when I'm 2. I'm kidding. But yeah, so the data center industry is a specialty I've been involved in probably solely for about the last 30 years, 25, 30 years. And I wrote an Amazon best-selling book called Jumpstart Your Career in Data Centers that talks about all the different careers in the industry, on-ramps, how a data center works, what the ecosystem is, all those things to answer the question in short order. You can read it in a weekend. It was designed to do just that. And then there's 3 years of podcasts that go with that. There's a LinkedIn networking group, so you can sign up and get a mentor in the industry, ask questions, get connected. So yeah, that's what I've been up to. I am an RCDD, NTS. I've had over 40 certifications throughout the year. Some of those companies don't even exist anymore.
Yep.
Matter of fact, funny story, the first guy in our company that got an RCDD, we started this sign-up thing. What does an RCDD stand for? And my first response was really cool dressing dude, just, to be funny. And lo and behold, I got my RCDD the same week. So underneath it, he wrote really cool dressing dame. Just to have a little fun with the acronyms, but yep. It's been a minute.
Yeah, I love my acronyms. If you're on Facebook, on LinkedIn, you know that I love my acronyms. And that's a whole nother language our industry has that sometimes some people struggle with, right? And I have ordered your book. It just had not come in yet. And I like the fact that you said you can read it in a weekend. I'll put that test to a challenge, and I'm going to report back to you.
You should. Let me know.
So tell us a little bit about the book. Give us a, like the 50,000 foot view. What's in it?
Well, the idea behind the book was I think we could get a lot more people into the data center industry if they knew what it was. And so I just, looked online because I was going to do an outreach for a coding program and I was going to give some books out. And the only book available was 800 pages, co-written by 59 people. And who the heck is going to read that to figure out if they want to be in an industry? So I decided, the industry is not that difficult. I mean, certainly pieces of it are, but why wouldn't we just make that information available to anybody? So it talks about the ecosystem. It talks about all the different pieces and parts, from site selection, cable plant, communications connectivity, power, cooling, the IT kit, white space layout, white space design considerations, operations, data center infrastructure management, and how all that moves, and even where coding and those things fit in. But, to me, I think it's unfortunate that there's so much attention giving to coding, and people think that coding is the only way to be involved in IT, and that honestly could not be farther from the truth. So I wanted something where people, if they're starting out their first day in a data center, they at least can have a weekend read and figure out what's going on. If they're about to interview for a job in the data center, they'll know enough to ask intelligent questions and participate in those conversations. And if they're starting a brand new job, they can start at least with an understanding of what the thing is, how it works, how it fits together at a basic level. You don't have to know all the intricacies, but think of the conversations just from an end user perspective you can participate in if you have access to all of the other conversations that are happening around you in the room. And I think it sets people up for success. I did highlight trades, women, and vets for a reason. Women are 51% of the population. We are nowhere near gender parity in tech. There's jobs for everybody. Trades, if it weren't for the trades, nothing would be built. So in my opinion, we owe the trades everything, and they need to be celebrated equally as anybody with a college degree. And then veterans, and their spouses and families too, by the way. I work with all of them to help get them in the industry, because if you put your butt on the line for this country, I think you and your family deserve every opportunity. And if I can help that along, then yay. So that's it in a nutshell.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, absolutely. Because, because of my podcast, I got to ask you a question. I'm putting together, I do my Thursday night live streams, right? One of them in March, probably late March, I want to do a roundtable of podcasters in the industry. So I'm lining up, like, for example, Todd from BS Solutions, lining up Steve from Tech Talk with Steve. Would you be interested in participating in that?
Sure.
Nice.
Absolutely.
Nice.
I think anything that gets the word out and helps people in whatever media format that's digestible for them. I'm working on the audiobook right now with author notes. I'm working on a teacher's workbook that they can use in the classroom to go with the book. So, and then I'm also doing some work with Nomad Futurist, who also would be a great person for you to have on your podcast, because they podcast as well. He's setting up a lot of educational materials for people in undeveloped countries and stuff. So definitely part of it's going to go to that as well, because I think, why should it not be accessible? Why do you have to sign up for 4 years of college debt to figure out how to work in a data center? And my answer is you don't. And if you want to go work in a data center, there's a million jobs. If you want to get a college degree, knock yourself out. But if you're smart, you'll start in one of those jobs and let those companies pay for it, so you don't end up with ridiculous amounts of student debt at the end.
Yeah, I hear you. And I reached out to the Nomad Futurist because maybe I saw it showed up as a post on my LinkedIn feed. Maybe it's because I was interacting with you, preparation to the show. Because sometimes that happens. Some things you follow pops up in my feed, and I reached out to them about, hey, what is Nomad Futurist? And so we got a conversation going, and I will eventually lead down that path. Like, okay, how can I get you on the show? And I like the fact that you're focusing on, like I said, the trades, the vets, and the women. One of the most popular questions I get is usually about data centers. I just got a message from a guy that I'm semi-mentoring. I'm mentor through the Big C program, and I have people I'm mentoring outside that program. And I have what I call my unofficial mentoring people who just reach out for me for questions from time to time. And so the one guy said, Chuck, just want to let you know I got a job in a data center. I was like, yes, nice. So that's one of the questions I get quite often. It sounds like your book's going to be a great resource. I'm really, really looking forward to doing that. Did you imagine yourself being an author of a book, or did you just a need and you decide, hey, this is something I need to do?
Well, I've done a lot of writing throughout my career, lots of white papers and blogs. I still do technical writing, by the way, if anybody needs any holler. But it's something I enjoy, and it's something that honestly was just needed. It was just something that was necessary. And I know there's several other people that are working on books and textbooks because the curriculum definitely has not kept up with the industry. There's
Right.
maybe 5 degree programs in data centers, and most people come into the industry with a degree in something else. And I just wanted something that would level the playing field. And I tell you, the biggest driving factor behind that, and I'm not one to play the chick card, but the attrition rate for women in technology is 67%.
Wow.
That's not to leave their job. That's to leave an entire industry. And I think, and certainly, you know, a lot of the trades and people that are educated differently, they feel like they don't have a place in the industry. They, you know, because that education has not been made available to them, or even the curriculum wasn't there. So they didn't even get introduced to it to start with. And I thought, you know, there's an easier way to do this. There's a way that we can introduce this industry to people and make it not so mystified and not so technical and not so difficult, because there's room for everybody in this industry.
Yes.
There's room for every single skill level, every single passion. And here's the other thing, and the most important thing: every single known documented, digitally documented thing on this planet lives in a data center somewhere. Every known digitally documented thing. And so if we want this industry to reflect the makeup of the people that consume this industry, it has to be every bit as diverse as the people that use it. And that, you know, look at some of the flack that's coming with Chat GBT and some of these other technologies that are very, very slanted towards the bias of the coder. Well, the way we get out of that is to have people of all different backgrounds that can vet code and can vet these programs, and that can work with the industry and provide a voice at the table and be on the boards and provide those voices. And so I just, you know, it was definitely a need.
It's funny you mentioned how Chat GPT is, and the industry is leans. I was on a live stream last night. We were just talking about that, and also I like that you used the word mystified, because that word, and you know, a lot of people, they build up this wall, and they're like, oh, I don't know if I could, I don't know if I can do, I don't know if I could be in a data center, I don't know if I could be a fiber tech. And I think what you've done here, you've blown that wall to pieces. I really do. I mean, I haven't read the book yet, but I know enough people who've read your book that there's just screaming, you know, hey, this is a great book. That's why I said, I need to get me a copy of this thing. And that's, I appreciate that you did that. Now, let me ask you this question. How is working in a data center going to be different from a low voltage technician's perspective?
I think the biggest difference is that it is very much a mission critical environment. So you have to be super conscious of everything around you. You know, things like a button on your shirt sleeve that unplugs a fiber cable can take down hundreds of thousands of people. You know, safety practices, making sure that you understand how many floor tiles you can remove if there's a raised floor. Some of those kind of things I think are very different. It's definitely a risk averse environment. If you're working in a building, for instance, and you take a cable out or you're terminating a cable, you're impacting one person.
Right.
In a data center, depending on the data center, and if it's certainly if it's a hyperscaler, you know, some of the systems are set to be resilient and tolerant, but in some of the non-hyperscale data centers, accidentally unplugging a cable can have detrimental impacts. And, you know, we read about them all the time. When somebody goes down, it's very big, it's very public. There's lots of chatter about it. So I think that's probably the biggest thing, is understanding the risk level in the environment. The tools don't really change. So you might do more fusion splicing of multiple strands of ribbon fiber or something like that. You know, there might be some skills that are slightly different, but I think the biggest thing is just that mindfulness of how risky that environment is, and just be careful.
My brother's going to hate that I'm telling this story. My brother's also in communications, and many, many years ago, like you, I've been in the industry for over 4 decades. And for a while there, my brother and I worked together, and we were doing work in a data center for one of the U.S. largest law firms. And he was setting a 1/4-inch fish tape underneath the floor to go from one side of the data center to the other. And because, fish tapes we would curl up the end
Oh,
of it so
sure.
you can attach a pull string to pull it back. Well, as he was pulling it back, he hooked a T1 line and yanked it right out.
That'll
And
do it.
he knocked down, and of course we were working, it knocked down communication between all of the branches, not just the DC office, but Ohio and everywhere else. And they had the connectivity. And the funny thing was, this is why I want to tie this in, is because when I got back to the office that day, I went upstairs to meet with my boss, because he text messaged me, come see me. And he says to me, do you want me to do it, or are you going to do it? And I immediately knew I was going to have to fire my own brother.
Oh no.
Because they wanted a scapegoat. That could happen to anybody.
It could.
It
And
absolutely can
honestly,
happen to anybody.
that is something, they probably shouldn't have, because I can absolutely guarantee your brother never let that happen again.
Right. Oh no,
And,
exactly.
it is a risk averse industry. And I do think that is one downside a little bit to the data center industry is, that whole culture of fear. If you screw something up, it's your job on the line. I think we have to get away from that. And, as long as it wasn't something that was completely negligent, like somebody showed up drunk to work and, did something wrong or something like that, I think we have to get rid of that, because honestly, that's where innovation comes from. If people aren't afraid to fail, that's where the true light bulbs go off and the true innovation comes from, where people see that there's a problem, there's something that needs to be fixed, and they just jump in and do it. And so that, I hope, changes over time. And I think some organizations are doing a little better job at that, especially now that we have more internships and apprenticeship programs happening in the industry. But yeah, they probably should have kept him for that very reason.
Yeah. True learning.
Sure, if you ask him today, that hasn't happened to him again.
I guarantee it hasn't. True learning comes from making mistakes. I saw a meme that said, paraphrasing that, said that as well. And you're absolutely right. And the only reason he got fired is because it was the anchor customer, and they said, we want this guy fired. So my boss didn't want to take any chance on him showing back up out there again and then saying, wait, we thought you were going to fire him.
The cancel culture of ICT.
Exactly. So let me ask you this. So you mentioned about heat aversion in data centers, and if you could expand on this. I mean, I kind of know why, but maybe you can verb it better than me. A lot of techs don't understand. You just can't open up a whole bunch of floor tiles in a data center, because it disrupts the airflow system and causes equipment to overheat. Give us some general guidelines.
So normally it depends on the type of raised floor. They all have different requirements. So there's a few reasons you have to be careful when you pull a data center floor. One is stability. Those tiles actually help to stabilize the floor. The other thing is all of that air is pressurized. So if they're using that raised floor environment for air delivery, if you open up too many, just like your mom said, close the refrigerator door. Don't stand there with the door open. All of those things, it's the same exact thing, because it is a finely tuned balance the way the air moves through the room. And if you open too many floors, you let all of the air escape in one place, and then the back half of the data center ends up really hot. If the equipment gets too hot, it shuts down, it records that to PROM, so your warranty is now void in a lot of cases. And we don't want equipment shutting down in a data center. So you just have to be respectful of the environment, and sometimes get crafty. Like, I was in a data center one time, and the guys had a remote control truck, and they would tie the cable to it and send it all the way across the data room floor, or all the way across the catwalk up top. There's different things that you can do, obviously being careful. And there's a big difference between whether you're working in a live environment or you're working in an environment that hasn't yet gone live, right? You've got a lot more forgiveness factor in that dead environment, so to speak, or that implementation environment. But again, you still have to, know the stability of the floor and how many tiles you can take out and that kind of thing. But it is, it is an ecosystem. If you mess up one part, you're going to mess up another part.
Absolutely. And it's funny. I always talk about how if you open up tiles, you're disrupting the airflow system and equipment can overheat. But I always fail to mention the floor stability. I'm going to have to start adding that in, because you're absolutely correct. Because if you've taken out a row of tiles before, you've walked on the tiles next to it, it's no longer stable. Right?
It is hinky. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And you can never seem to put them back in the exact same way that they were when they came out.
It's a lot of little stomping. Yeah.
Exactly. So let's shift the conversation, because part of my audience is also estimators and project managers and stuff, right? So what are some key takeaways that somebody at that level in the ICT can get from reading your book?
Well, I think there is a little bit about some design principles and that kind of thing, but I think for the most part, just understanding kind of the layout of the room and figuring out what you're going to need to do, because the environment's different. You're going to have ladder rack above cabinets, for instance. So, figuring out what that distance is to get up to that ladder rack, up to that basket tray, figuring out how many cables are going in, understanding the difference. If you've got a customer that says, look, I just want to put in 5E cable in the data center, you need to know enough to be able to make the argument to say, no, I think we need to put in 6A. It's the minimum in the standards. Here's the benefits.
Right.
Those are the kind of subtleties I think that will help sort of anybody along the road. And even if you don't take something out of the book for you to use day one in your job, the conversations that you'll be able to participate in about the other areas that are foreign to you, that you don't really have an impact in or you don't really work in, being able to participate in those conversations, you start learning a lot more. And the cool thing is, if something happens to your job, you've now been exposed to a wealth of other jobs where your experience is completely applicable, and you can talk the talk and walk the walk. And that's going to set you aside leaps and bounds from people that know nothing. Think of all the people we know in this industry that have come in from the medical field or some other field that are completely foreign to anything tech. And then companies say, look, here's a week on the job training. Now go sell our stuff. That, you kind of set those people up for failure. And I think if you have that broader background, instead of sitting at the table looking like a deer in the head, deer in the headlights while somebody's having a conversation you don't understand, you can at least start pulling in information. I mean, and here's the other thing that I think is really, really important to note. There is nobody our age in this industry that didn't go through some type of an apprenticeship.
Exactly.
Nobody.
It may not have been formal. It may not have been formal, but we've had somebody.
Informal, but we all learned on the job. We all learned as we went. This industry did not exist. It has absolutely evolved. We learn from each other. We teach each other. That's the beauty of the industry. And so, everybody's ignorant till they know. We're all on a level playing field, right? Everybody's ignorant till they know. And I think that just being able to participate and learn, man, you can be a sponge. I mean, once you start learning about the rest of the technology around you, it's kind of addicting. It's hard to turn it off. It really is.
Yes.
You just sponge it all up and you jump to the next thing and the next thing. And so I think if you just have that, and that's why I called it Jumpstart. If you just have that basic feel. And the other thing is, it talks a lot about the different jobs in the industries and what those job titles are. So as you start talking to people in the industry and you think that could be a cool job, you can at least go look now and see what kind of skills are required, because it varies from company to company. We don't really have standard sort of job descriptions in the industry.
Right.
But then you'll know what those concepts mean. You'll know what those tasks are. And then you can go look and find out. You can go take a MOOC that's completely free. It's a college level class. You can take it 100% online. It's free. You get the exact same degree. You can put it on your resume. You don't get credits for it from the college, but you also don't have to pay for it. And you also don't have to take any tests, but you get the benefit of learning.
What was that resource again?
MOOC, Massive Open Online Communications. And you can study anything you want. It is the same exact courses they teach in college.
I'm going to have to check
and
that
most
out.
colleges have those. So, there's lots of ways that you can develop that learning path. And I think on the backside of that, the hard part is getting all of these companies to put less credence on a degree and more credence on people, training, and knowledge. Because I'm going to tell you, having been in the hiring and firing position for the majority of my career, I've hired educated idiots.
Yep.
I've also hired people with no education that turned out to be the absolute best employees, the most loyal employees.
Yep.
I invested in their training. I invested in their futures, and they would honestly never leave. They followed, I had a couple that followed me 2 or 3 different jobs.
Right.
But I think that we have to really change that corporate mindset, because most of our jobs don't require a degree. Outside of engineering and some of those that actually have a PE requirement, most of them
structural engineer, electrical engineer. Yeah.
Companies like to have them, and most of them listed tuition reimbursement as a benefit. But how much of a benefit is that if you only hire people that don't need it? I mean, it's lip service at that point, right?
And to be honest, how's your degree in literature going to help you manage a project.
It doesn't. Well, here's the other thing. If your degree is 10 years old, how is it valid anyway?
Right. Right.
Like, what is in that 10-year degree that you have not learned with 10 years experience in the field?
Yes.
I absolutely guarantee you it's nothing, because anything that was not applicable to your field, you probably forgot anyway.
Yes. And our industry is horrible at this, especially at the project management level, right? They'll hire somebody because they've got a degree in literature or whatever. And I'd say that because I actually know a guy who got hired as a project manager with a literature degree. And you know what? Here's the thing: the problems are they just kind of roll downhill, right? The crews don't respect him because he doesn't know what the heck they're talking about. He hasn't walked the walk, right?
Sure.
And they don't know the pieces, the parts. They might be good at writing a really good proposal, but managing people, like you said, the sign of a good leader is, like you said, when you have people who will follow you to the ends of the earth, that's a sign of a good leader right there. And
Sure.
just because you got a 4-year degree doesn't make you a leader. And but also on the flip side of that, just because you got a really good senior tech, that doesn't automatically equate them to being a good PM. But they're definitely a lot further along in making them into a PM than somebody who has that degree in literature.
But that's a certification course. See,
Yes.
There's the difference.
Yes.
You can go get certified to be a PM. You can do it through Bixby. You can do it, depending on, you can go Scrum if you want to go that route. You can go PMP if you want to go that route. There's lots of ways that you can get that certification, or even on-the-job training and do that as an apprenticeship. My deal is, if somebody's been working for an equal amount of time in this industry, I would rather have somebody with 4 years experience than a 4-year degree all day, every day, because they've been in the mires. And, all this talk about diversity and inclusion, if you really want to have these equity conversations, help people out with training. It doesn't have to be this one way only, because once you force everybody to only learn in a singular way, what you're doing is you're educating out diversity. You don't want that. You want the people that have learned from the school of hard knocks. You want the people that can reach and get it. You want the people that are going to try to figure it out. You want the people that know nothing and aren't scared to ask a question, especially in design meetings, because sometimes those idiot questions, as somebody might call them, are the ones that say, wow, we didn't think of that, and that is perfect.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's the benefit of diversity. And that's the bit that's getting completely lost in all these conversations, is the diversity of experience. Yes. That is the biggest diversity benefit any company can gain.
Yep. I did a design meeting for a call center in Mexico City years ago. And so we were there for like 10, 15 days or something like that. And we met this guy at the bar. He was a criminal investigator for a large bank. He was just there, and we hit it off. And we was like, hey, we're going to a meeting. You want to come with us? He's like, yeah, sure. So he came, sat with us. We're in this meeting with the general contractor, the architects, the end user, and us. And we're trying to figure out how to get these cables from one point in this floor to another point in the floor. And this guy who has no construction experience at all, he goes, why don't you just trench the concrete? We're like, he's banking. And it's clear to him. Why didn't we think of this? But you're right. Just sometimes multiple eyes on something from different points of view in the forest helps you see everything. It just does.
And then you're better, right? You're not making as many revisions later. You're accommodating different things. Even in a design meeting for a cable plant layout. Right? I can't tell you the number of meetings I've been in where somebody has all their electronics, all their servers picked out, and then they design a cable plant. But they did it off of recommendations from the network and design company or the server company. And I said, well, now wait a minute now. If you put in a little more cabling, you can cut out half of these switches, which means you're going to drop out half of the port expense, half the maintenance expense, half of your power expense, and you'll have the same thing for a 10% uplift in your cable plant. And people were shocked. Yes. And I think, as you start that whole ecosystem conversation where you can have those conversations and understand the different specialties and have the different set of eyes on things that are not viewed through the lens of what's my commission going to look like at the end of the month, then, you can start really advocating for your end users and kind of helping those conversations along. And I think that's really the beauty of getting that sort of full meal deal perspective,
Right.
for lack of a better term,
Right.
you know, kind of how it all fits together. And, you know, I've made myself available to answer questions for anybody. They can reach out to me on LinkedIn. They can reach out to me on my website. They're certainly welcome to email me. But if anybody has questions through the book, I mean, I expect this to be a very large mentorship exercise. And it was written to be just that.
Excellent. Excellent. So let me ask you a question. So you talk about your book lays out a career path. So what kind of give us an overview? What does that career path look like for somebody who wants to work in a data center?
So there's about 300 different careers listed in the book, and they're all listed within the confines of what those tasks are. So when we talk about site selection, we talk about real estate personnel and the fact that heavy machine equipment operator, diesel mechanics, all of those have a play in where those are, right? And so the idea is once you start seeing some of these job descriptions, if they appeal to you and that piece of the industry appeals to you, now you know what job descriptions to go look for. You can start figuring out what those skills need to be in that particular job. Maybe people don't even know what those job descriptions are because this industry has been kind of so hidden outside of, you know, Northern Virginia has a really good program because they're right in the middle of Data Center Alley.
Exactly.
But, you know, Nigeria doesn't. Latin America doesn't. You know, there's different, even parts in the US where that curriculum doesn't exist, even though data centers exist. People don't realize they're in every single city. And especially as we start adding autonomous vehicles and other things, the demand for data centers everywhere is just going to skyrocket. And so the idea is, you know, here's a section, here's site selection, here's some of the jobs there. From site selection, we move to some of the design considerations or selection considerations. So then we go to building envelope. Here's some of the jobs that deal with the building envelope, you know, concrete workers, masons, you know, where you put things in a building, what these areas and what the rooms mean within the building and what they do. Then we move into white space design and talk about the different careers in there and how that white space lays out and where the HVAC techs come into play and ICT techs. So I tried to kind of write it as a progression, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Right.
And I hope that it helps. You know, I've not had any feedback where anybody said, "Hey, you know, I got nothing out of this book. It was a waste of my money."
I don't think you will. Yeah.
Maybe that's the used one for sale on Amazon. I don't know, but so far I think it's
Well, I like the fact that you're addressing the career paths even outside of the ICT industry, because there are definitely some construction firms that specialize in nothing but data centers.
Oh, for sure. For
Absolutely.
sure.
And a lot of people don't realize that. You know, there might be a guy out there. I doubt he's listening to this podcast because he's driving a forklift or driving a, you know, bulldozer, because this doesn't really apply. But there are companies out there that do that. And maybe somebody who's listening can say, look, maybe you want to go apply for that construction company that does data center, because there is an uptick in wages when you start
Oh,
dealing
for sure.
with, and that's usually the big motivator. But like you said, the big thing is they're afraid of, well, what do I don't know? And fear can paralyze people.
Can
Absolutely paralyze.
absolutely be crippling. Yeah. And so I just wanted to take that out. You know, I just thought that it might be so nice just to have that basic bit. And then from there, you can decide where you want to go. If you think that, you know, you read through this and cooling is really cool, or if you read through the book and sustainability is something that you're really, really passionate about, well, these are the things that we're facing in this industry from a sustainability standpoint. Jump in, because honestly, I think that the next really great innovation in the data center industry is going to come from outside of the data center industry. It's going to be somebody that kind of saw a problem, that thought about a unique solution. Look at rear door heat exchangers.
Oh
Who the heck
yeah. Oh
wants to put a
yeah.
car radiator on a cabinet, right?
Yeah.
So I think immersion cooling is another one. You know, who thought to stick a server down in fluid and make that work?
Right. Exactly.
So I think all of this innovation, all of these things are going to come from that balance of knowledge, right? If you go to college and that everybody just tells you how it works, you have some opportunity outside of that to make some of those changes. But why do you have to submit to 4 years of college to do
Right.
that? And that may be your path. And if it is, knock yourself out. I mean, I'm not downplaying college degrees at all. I'm just saying that there's a lot of on-ramps to this industry that don't necessarily require college. And if you want to get that degree, there is an avenue to do that where the companies will pay for that for you, and you can learn as you're going and you can be productive while you're going. I think, college, that's one barrier to a lot of people is they need to be making money that 4 years.
Right.
And this is a way you can start doing that and making that money and then work towards it. If you want to go to night school, if you want to, or maybe you decide, look at right now, if you go to New York City and a kid goes through an apprenticeship program to be an electrician, they graduate making over $100,000 a year with zero college debt. So I think personally, we have to meet people where they work. We have to meet people where they want to work.
And where they learn and where they learn.
And where they want to learn. And I think we have to make that accessible and available because it takes all kinds to make this world go round. Yeah. We cannot fix everything with college education. If your toilet backs up into your shower, the last thing you're going to look for is a degree. Right? You just want the problem solved.
Well, that just painted a visual picture in my head that I'm going to be dealing with all day.
Thank you. Right?
Thank you. Thank you.
But the point is, it takes all of us to make this, to make it happen. And it takes all of us to make the industry work. And it takes all of us to make this industry include all of us. Right. But, the deal is if we don't start really embracing all of these people, the talent shortage that we have, which right now, by the way, just in this industry today, we have 300,000 jobs open right now that have to be filled in the next 2 years. And that's not including, nobody knows how many of us are going to gray out. I personally hope to be one. Yes. I'm all for button saying beer in hand. I'm working on that trajectory right now. Right. But, we have to start replenishing this. We have to start, you take a kid that had a horrible time in high school. The last thing he wants to do is go to college.
Right.
But that makes him no less valuable member of society. Maybe he can turn around and invent the next best thing.
Or inspire the next person.
Inspire the next person.
Right. There's a guy that I know. My whole world of podcasts started off with a podcast called the Survival Podcast with Jack Spirko. Jack Spirko, he'll tell you, and then you listen to any of his episodes, he'll tell you he suffered in school because he had learning disabilities and he didn't learn the way that they wanted you to learn. That's why I love that you pinned that out. He didn't learn that way, but now he came out. He actually worked in the ICT industry. He worked for Fluke for a while. He was like a national sales manager or something, and just because he didn't learn the traditional way, people thought, well, you're not going to manage much. He never went to college. But I tell you what, very successful person. And on top of that, who knows how many, not hundreds of people, but thousands of people he's inspired, because he talks about permaculture and, not just get guns or whatever, but how to grow your own food, how to store your own food, how to dehydrate, freeze dry, all kinds of stuff. And the guy never went to college and just a wealth of knowledge. And that's why I said, you never know who you're going to inspire. That's why, again, my target audience for this whole podcast is the young people coming in, and I have to go to where they are because, like you said, just because that's the way we've always done it doesn't necessarily mean it's the right or best way to do it now.
Well, now you could go backwards on that a little bit too. If you go back 100 years, we were cutting people open and removing organs based on handwritten notes that were passed down in a prairie somewhere from one person to the next. That was the town doctor at the next town, no formal college training, but we trusted them with somebody's life. And so my point is there's a million avenues to learning. You take a kid that's on the spectrum that had a horrible time in high school, the last thing they want to do is go jump in another classroom environment. And we know now there's so much with remote learning. There's so many ways that people can learn and participate. And I just think all of that should be accessible.
And I think we, as in the generation about to retire, generation about to retire, GATR. There's a new acronym for it. Generation about to retire, right? We need to be not only just take a more active approach to mentoring people, but we also have to reach outside our comfort zone and go to where they are.
Right? For sure.
What I mean by that is some young people don't like learning in a classroom environment. They might like to learn in a, like you said, in a trades kind of apprenticeship program, or if you want to try to get a message out, that might mean going to a social media platform. Don't go to Facebook. If you want to reach the young people, TikTok is where you need to go.
Well, for as long as it's still legal.
Yeah. And that's why I don't ever put anything on there that doesn't need to be on there anyway. But there's a lot of low voltage people on there that are just hungry for knowledge, and that's where they are. Same thing with, young people love Discord. Discord's like a Slack type internet relay channel thing. They love being there, and I'm in the process of creating a Discord channel because even though that's outside of my comfort zone, that's where they are, and that's where the impact that we need. And then once you got them hooked in, and like you said, addicted to learning, addicted to knowledge, like you said, then you got to challenge them. How are you going to pay it forward? How are you going to pay this forward? Right, and that's the key.
If you're not paying it forward, you're not doing it right. I'm just telling you.
Yeah, exactly right. Speaking of TikTok, there's this huge thing going around. It's called a teenage filter, where it splits the screen and you aim the camera at you, and then it puts you down on the bottom, and then it puts you at the top as well, but through some kind of filter, it makes you look like a teenager again. Right? And so there's a huge thing of people doing this, when you're apologizing to their old teenage selves, it's like, be strong, you'll make it through it, blah blah blah. And so I did one, but of course, me being a content creator, I did mine a little differently. I talked to mine, and I said, hey, I remember you. And of course I did the young me, hey. And I said, hey, one piece of advice: get your RCDD sooner. Don't wait. Don't procrastinate. Right. But let's say if that was real. If you could turn back the hands of time to meet yourself at 18 years old, what would you tell yourself at 18 years old to give yourself advice for life?
Oh, wow. I'd add a few things.
Okay. Professional related.
I honestly have just never been one of those people that's scared to jump in with both feet. And I would say probably to my 18-year-old self, or any 18-year-old, even any young person in the industry, is that don't feel like you have to settle just to have a paycheck. I think that in some cases, especially, when you're raising kids and other things happen, that, you feel like, oh my God, I just have to have a job. And sometimes that's not the right fit for you. You do learn lessons from those places, in that they're places that you don't want to work. But I will say, I think going through my career, there's times that I put up with stuff I probably should not have. And in the lens of today, a lot of that was probably legally actionable.
Right.
But, I think I would advise myself to continue that fearless learning and not being afraid to jump in and learn something with 2 feet. I mean, I learned networking when nobody even knew what it was. And I was setting up wide area networks all over the country because nobody else knew how to do that. And I couldn't have done that if I'd have had that fear, or that fear that maybe I didn't know enough or wasn't good enough. You are as good as a phone call. As long as you know who to ask for help, that's all you need. My granddaddy taught me that a long time ago. And that would be, I guess, the biggest advice I give anybody. Don't be afraid to ask for help, because what you'll find is people don't think people won't think bad of you. They actually think more of you if you ask for help than if you sit there and spin your wheels and that kind of thing. And a lot of my career was consulting. And I can absolutely assure you that customers don't want to pay you to sit there and try to figure something out. They pay you to know who to call, to shortcut that solution, to fix it for them. And I think that's probably the best advice, is just, jump in with both feet. Don't be afraid to ask, and keep on trucking, and value your contributions. I think, especially as women, we're not really taught to do that. I think that I should have placed more value, I think, on some of my contributions over the years than I have, and probably advocated better for myself. And if you don't know how to do that, find a mentor that can help you do that.
Yeah, mentors, are a huge key to success. They absolutely are. I appreciate having you on today. Great conversation, man.
Absolutely. We could have talked for hours, I think.
We could have. We absolutely could have. We might have to have you on a different subject later on.
We can do that.
Because I can tell you're a gifted speaker, and there's going to be very little editing in this because it was such a great back and forth. So I interviewed an engineer 6-8 months ago about something or another, and engineers, you know how they are. They're talking, but they're thinking 4 steps ahead, and sometimes they got to kind of stop their talking, and they
yeah.
Man, that was a nightmare to edit. Brilliant person. But it was just a nightmare as a video content creator to edit all that and make it look smooth. But that's why I love conversations like this, where, we're just 2 birds, on a different path, just doing the same thing. And so I appreciate having you on, and thanks for writing the book. I'm buying not one today. I'm buying two today, one for me, and then I'm going to give one away. So if you're listening to this episode, you got to share it, and then you got to tag me so I see that you share it, and I will pick somebody randomly, and I will send them the copy of your book.
Perfect.
I appreciate you and everything that you're doing for this industry, Carrie. You're knocking out of the park. You are not only leading for other women, you're also leading for everybody in this industry to do better. And I certainly appreciate that.
Well, thank you. I try. It's a little drip in the pond, but we get enough of those, that pond will be rocking.
That's right. Okay, let me do the outro real quick. If my restream decides it wants to work, there it goes. So data centers, huge potentials. And the only thing that's stopping you is you. Till next time, knowledge is power.
That's it for this episode of today's podcast. We hope you were able to learn something. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. Also, leave a rating so we can help even more people learn about telecommunications. Until next time, be safe.